All right, welcome in, everybody. We are live on Talking Tide. Week 2 is officially done. We're going into Week 3. This is going to be the Week 2 review show, and then we'll have the preview show coming out on Friday. So, full slate of games this week. Week 2 was honestly more interesting than Week 1, even though it didn't really look like it was going to be. A couple of upsets, a lot of weird football games went on, a couple of comebacks, all that good stuff. So, we'll get straight into it. If you don't know the show, we're going to go through, talk about mainly SEC play, a lot of football, and occasionally we'll jump in basketball, all that good stuff. But it's going to be mostly SEC stuff. There are a couple games this week I want to talk about that are out of conference. Colorado is one of them. There's a few other ones here and there. But mostly going to be SEC stuff, and then whenever we get into it, it's going to be obviously what you're here for, which is Alabama stuff. So we'll go ahead and jump straight into it and get the old ticker going. There we go. So you got kind of our weekly slate of games. First things first, if you guys see down, I still can't get that right, over here, right in here, where it says on it. They are a trading card company. They help out this show. Go hit them up. Also, SeatGeek there as well. So if you need tickets for this week's game against Wisconsin, hit them up, and they'll get you squared away. All right, first game on the slate. We got a couple cupcakes this week like we did last week. Georgia, Tennessee Tech. Georgia, we're never going to lose this game. 48-3. They went off. Beck threw for 5 touchdowns. They just were never going to lose that football game. Cupcake in week 2. Ole Miss beat Middle Tennessee 52-3. Jackson Dart still throwing up a lot of numbers. 337 through the air. Only 1 touchdown. They punched in a lot of touchdowns on the ground, but he's still putting up Heisman-level numbers against Middle Tennessee, but a win's a win. Buffalo, Missouri. That's not a town. Buffalo versus Missouri. Missouri won 38-0. Again, Missouri looked good. Haven't had a lot of super stiff competition. They sit at number 9 in the AP poll. We'll be curious to see once they start meeting up some competition. They played Boston College this week. So far, they played Murray and Buffalo. So not a lot of competition there. They're cruising through the first 2 weeks, no problem, though. So I'll be curious to see how they continue in SEC play. I'm going to get to this one later. It's the next one on the slate, but I do have some apologies to make from my preview show. One I want to talk about was, honestly, the ugliest football game you'll ever watch. If you have friends who don't like college football or not getting into college football, they like NFL and all this kind of stuff, do not show them this football game. Houston versus Oklahoma, 16-12. Oklahoma win. It's ugly. Like, it is. If you're talking about ugly games on the list, I talked a couple weeks ago, or it was rather last week, I guess, against USC LSU. One of the funnest games I've watched in a long time. Great quarterback play. This was the opposite of that. This is something that you give to somebody who you want to hate college football. Let me pull up some stats in this game. If my computer will let me. This was just, the scoreline is ugly. The game was ugly. The stats are not impressive. It just was not a good football game to watch. It was a boring one. Oklahoma got a win, and they'll stay in the AP, but they need to shape up if they're going to be in the SEC. There's a lot stiffer competition coming down the road. They play Tulane this week, and then they go. They have Tennessee come to visit them, and Tennessee, spoiler alert, they look good. That's going to be a real problem for them. If they don't shape up, they will have a lot of problems. Played good week 1 against Temple, won 51-3, and then the very next week, 16-12. So they've got some shaping up to do out there in Oklahoma. Up next, another Oklahoma team, Oklahoma State and Arkansas. Now, if you did not watch this football game, there's a couple games like this week, a tale of two halves. Arkansas outscored Oklahoma State 21-7 in the first half, and then proceeded to get, well, I would say outscored. It was a tie ball game at the end of the day. It went to overtime. Oklahoma State won. Arkansas absolutely threw away this game in one of the more embarrassing fashions I've seen in a long time. If Arkansas are going to want to be able to compete, which they have, I think, the team to compete, they showed it by putting up a lot of points in this game and pushing Oklahoma State, which was a clear favorite. They just can't close. They can't close out a football game. I say can't. They didn't in this situation, and they're going to have to learn how to close out in football games coming up because, as we all know, the SEC is a hard conference. They play UAB this week, so I'll be curious to see what the line comes out on that. Obviously, they'll be a favorite, but they need to be able to close out football games to win and pull upsets like that. LSU, Nichols. LSU's 18 in the AP poll. Totally unfair. They're a much better football team than 18th. Honestly, I'd probably put them 12 to 10. Having that loss week one, though, didn't help against a good USC team. They beat Nichols, which, if you can tell me what their mascot is, I'll give you all the money in my wallet because I'm staring at their logo and I can't figure it out. They beat them 44-21. Kind of concerning that they gave up 21 to a Nichols team, and they weren't garbage time scores. They put up 7 points in every quarter except for the fourth. I don't love that from LSU. It was 7-9 at the end of the first quarter. It was 14 to, I want to say it was like 20 to 23 at the end of the first half. It wasn't great coming out from LSU. Garrett Nussmeier had a great stat line, 302 and 6 touchdowns. Makes it look a lot more impressive than maybe it actually was. But LSU got a win. They're better than a top 18 team. Again, I'd probably put them around 10 to 12 if I had any control in college football. But yeah, they played an okay football game. Not their best, but the stat line may lie a touch, kind of like we may see in the future. But yeah, LSU get a win at home to Nichols. They go 1-1. Let's see who they play South Carolina this week. That's going to be a fun football game. We'll get to South Carolina here in a minute, but that will be a fun football game. That might have been one after week one, and South Carolina really struggled with Old Dominion in week one. That might have been one that was overlooked, but now it's certainly not overlooked with how well South Carolina handled Kentucky. So that'll be a fun game. Next up, Texas A&M played McNeese. They won 52-10, as you'd expect. They never looked like they were going to lose this football game. The 10 points they gave up were garbage time. The only concern I have for Texas A&M in this football game is the quarterback play. It's deceiving winning 52-10, but when your quarterback only puts up 125 yards against McNeese, it's a little bit concerning. I want to say he threw 12 to 15 passes in this game. Let's pull it up real quick. It was just very uninspired quarterback play. And I think Texas A&M is really going to have to try and figure out what to do with that if they're going to compete this year, which I don't personally think they're going to compete this year. I think that was showed early on. Wingman 11 for 14 for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged about 10 yards of completion, but it was just uninspired quarterback play. Just not great coming out of Texas A&M. One of my favorite games of the week. It was boring. Again, don't show it to your friends. It wasn't boring. It was entertaining, but it was not good football. Cal went into Jordan Hare and beat Auburn 21-14. I was sitting on the floor charging my cell phone in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I watched Peyton Thorne throw that final interception in the Cal game, and you would have thought we had scored a touchdown in that room, us being the University of Alabama. It was bad for Auburn. They went -5 in the turnover margin. They're not a good football team. They played Alabama A&M week one. They dominated, which you expect them to, but they are not a good football team. I'll read you this stat line. 14 of 27, 165, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 28.9 QBR from Peyton Thorne. He is not the guy to lead Auburn forward as a quarterback. Who else? Somebody else had a fumble in this game as well. I don't actually remember who it was. I think it was actually Jarquez Hunter, who is the only bright spot for them on that team, really. The only semblance of talent. I'm surprised he's still there, to be honest. I think there was whispers of him leaving last year. But Auburn is not a good football team. They'll play us well. They always do. But it's just not it for Auburn right now. They have a lot of work to be done down there. One game I have to sincerely apologize on is Kentucky, South Carolina. South Carolina went out and they struggled with Old Dominion. Kentucky was a -9.5 point favorite coming into this game at home. And South Carolina beat them 31-6. Now, if Shane Beamer is watching this, I don't think he actually is. I said last week I was formerly Beamer Ball in. Last week I was out. and then now I'm back in. They dominated this football game. It was never even going to be close. It's one of the games, if you run it 10 times or 100 times, South Carolina was going to win this game every single time. They still don't have a great... The quarterback play isn't great still, but man, it was a heck of a lot better. I'll read you one more stat line for quarterback play. Now, there was 2 quarterbacks in this game that played for Kentucky, Vandergraff and Wimsatt. Brock Vandergraff is a former Georgia transfer. They went a combined 6 of 17, 44 yards, and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Vandergraff had a 1.2 QBR, and Wimsatt had a 49.5 QBR in that game. Quarterback play was not it for this football game, but yeah, South Carolina just absolutely dominated. And they didn't really do it with offense. They did it with defense. I mean, they got nonstop pressures in this football game. 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Kentucky played a good week 1. If they continue to play offense like this with their offensive line, they're going to have serious problems coming down the stretch. South Carolina has a good defensive line, but it was a real problem for Kentucky last week. Your quarterback play has got to shape up, but if you don't have an offensive line, you can't do that. South Carolina just really went out and dominated this game. And now I don't really know where Kentucky sit. Obviously, coach for Kentucky went out last year and was expected to take the Texas A&M job, didn't end up taking it, or didn't end up getting hired. I think that he was fully expected to be coaching Texas A&M this year, and then now he's not. And it's hard to get back a locker room, I think, after that, but they got to figure something out. They won 30-0 in their first game. It's been a weird couple of months, or maybe not months, maybe 2 months for Kentucky. You thought you lost your head coach, who really built a good program down there in Kentucky. You go out, you win a game in 3 quarters, 30-0 because of weather, and then you go out and get just dog-walked against South Carolina that was just so uninspiring in week 1. So it's weird times for Kentucky. I think they'll shape up fine, but they need to shape up. They go play Georgia next week, and if their offensive line cannot play, I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath. Whatever Georgia is, take the points, and I think you'll be fine. Talking about South Carolina, they play LSU. I think that'll be a fun football game. I would have told you that South Carolina would get destroyed after week 1. Week 2 now? I don't know. They might be the first team to really put Nussmeier under some real pressure and see what he can do while on the back foot. I think that'll be a fun football game, and yeah, I'll be curious to watch it. Florida beat Samford. DJ Lagway started for Florida and had a heck of a stat line. 465 yards, 3 touchdowns. That was not the kind of quarterback play you were going to get from Mertz. I think that I really do feel going forward, Florida have to play him. There's no reason now not to play him. He went 18 for 25, 456, 18 and a half yards on average and 3 touchdowns. I mean, I don't think Graham Mertz is going to play that good of a football game all year. Granted, it's Samford. That's the easiest football game Florida's going to have all year, but I think Lagway is definitely the way going forward for Florida and Billy Napier. I still don't see it being a good season. It's still going to be really tough, but that's at least a little bit of a bright spark for them. Probably the story of the year so far. Vanderbilt beat Alcorn State 55-0. Now, Vanderbilt last week was a double-digit underdog to Virginia Tech, went out, won that football game, and then hung 55 on Alcorn State. They didn't have enough fireworks to end the game. They blow up fireworks every single touchdown they score, and they didn't have enough to finish the game. That's never happened in the history of Vanderbilt. So, good on them. I think that... I don't know. I don't know what to think about Vanderbilt yet. They got a good football team, a better football team than they have had in a long time. Quarterback play is okay with Pavia. He's the NDSU transfer. 10 for 13, 83 yards. But that's not the type of team they're going to be. They're not going to be the team to spread it all over the field with passing touchdowns. They scored 4 on the ground, and they just walked it all over Alcorn State. It's Alcorn State, so don't get me wrong. It's not like a right-home kind of win, but credit to Vanderbilt. They're building a program down there. Arizona State, Mississippi State. again, another game of two halves. Mississippi State was outscored 27-3 in the first half. They brought it back to 23 to 30. They ended up losing that football game at Arizona State, but fair play on them. I think they'll have a good year this year, Mississippi State, but they cannot get so far behind early in games where they just simply can't bring it back. If you're going to do that, you're just really going to start digging yourself holes all game, and they don't have the team to get out from there. They have a good football team that can win a lot of football games, but you can't be going behind 27-3 in the first half of the game. You're just never going to win football games like that, no matter how many you score in the second half. But fair play to them. They brought it back, made it competitive. Arizona State just outlasted them. Mississippi State put up 13 points in the fourth quarter and didn't give up any. So it just shows you how far behind they actually were in that football game to start. All right, let's get to a couple games that are actually a little bit more interesting. The first one I wanted to talk about, and I do have apologies to make, to Tennessee. And I hate apologizing to Tennessee because I hate Tennessee, but I try and be unbiased on this show. They went out, they beat NC State 51-10. Now, I think I was on record last week saying this could be a competitive football game. It was not. It was over arguably in the first quarter. It was definitely over after the first half. Tennessee was up 20-3 by the end of the first half. They put up 17 more in the third quarter and then tacked on 2 more touchdowns to end it in the fourth. All while NC State put up a total of 10 points in that game. Tennessee has a defense. That if you look at teams like USC, LSU last year, Tennessee, they are teams that can put up 1,000,000 points, but they cannot stop you from getting in the end zone. This year might be a different story from Tennessee. NC State has always had an okay offense the past couple of years, but they shut them down this last week. The interesting thing is, again, it wasn't overly dominant quarterback play. Nico, and I'm not even going to try and say his last name, went 16 for 23, 211, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So there is some weakness and some learning there. He'll be a good quarterback, I think, going forward, but there's definitely a couple of learning opportunities in that game. The problem for NC State is their quarterback went 15 for 22, 104, and 1 interception with a total of 22.7 QBR. Not only that, they only picked up 39 yards on the ground for a total of 140 total offensive yards. Tennessee put up 249 rushing yards and then tacked on 211 through the air after that. So this game was never close. Tennessee was never going to lose this football game, even going to NC State. Tennessee is a real deal. They have a real program now. I'm not going to say they're up there with Bama, Georgia, Texas, which we'll get to. They're not up there with those. They're not up there with the greats, but they're up there with the really goods. Now, if you're looking at a tier list, there's good and there's really good. Tennessee's getting into that really good level. If they can keep up this type of defensive work and the defensive play, I think they've got not a shot maybe to get into the playoffs. They'll be close. I think there'll be a few better teams out there than them, but they're on the cusp of it right now. They've got a real opportunity to go forward as a program. Let's talk about another drubbing that honestly I think the score is a little bit too kind to Michigan in this game. Texas went to the Big House and beat Michigan 31-12. Now, if you are a box score watcher or you are a AP poll watcher or you just look at betting lines, you might have thought this game was going to be close. If you're somebody who actually enjoys and watches football, this game was never going to be close. You could tell it. I think I said that last week, that this game was Texas was my lock of the week at -7.5. If you had the money and you could take them for that week, because this game was never, ever going to go Michigan's way. When you think about Michigan as a team, you think about fronts, defensive or offensive fronts, and that they're going to bully you around. It was the exact opposite. If I would have told you Michigan is playing in orange and white even last year, you would have believed me because they were the more physical team. Texas just absolutely dominated on the fronts. They had better quarterback play. All around, again, it's one of those ones, if you put it up to 100 times, if they played this game 14 times in a year, Texas is winning every single one. Warren Davis is not the guy to take Michigan forward. I don't think they have a better guy on the roster. We probably would have seen him yesterday, but he is not the guy to take them forward. When I was talking last game about Tennessee not getting up into that upper echelon of greats, they're there. Again, it's a Michigan team that's really down, I think, this year. Had a lot of turnover, had a lot of controversy. I'm not going to talk about that on here, but they had a lot of problems this year, and they got absolutely exposed by Texas. Texas could run the score up, I think, more if they wanted to. If you watch the game, the first drive, Texas walks it down the field and comes away at no points. But even then, as if you were a Texas fan, you're like, yeah, we have this in the bag. It was 24-3 at the end of the first half, and it just didn't get any better from then on for Michigan. Like I said, I think the scoreline was a little too kind. Texas only put up 7 points in the second half and still beat them by almost 20 points. So Michigan has a lot of work to go do. Texas, if you ask me, they're a real favorite to win a national championship. The string of games they have is not overly difficult. They play UTSA this week. They play UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. Georgia's the big one. That honestly, tout it for game of the year. If not Bama, Georgia, that one's going to be game of the year. They play at Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then they finish off with Texas A&M. They have a real shot to make it to the SEC championship, and they have a real shot to win the whole thing. They're a playoff contender, no doubt. I would give it as close to a lock as you can be for a playoff contender with skill and we'll say schedule, kind of that comparative. They have all the skill, and they have a schedule where they can very, very easily go undefeated in this. Not easily, they play Georgia, but they can definitely go undefeated or have a one-loss regular season. And for me, they're a playoff lock. I think they have a real good chance to win the national championship. All right. Now, this is Talking Tide. We're going to talk about Bama football. If you've been paying any attention to the screen over here, it kind of tells you a lot of what you need to know. It's, again, a tale of two halves. Bama beat USF 42-16, but the stats and the scoreline, they flatter us way too much in this game. It was ugly. It was a tough football game to watch, and it is early in the season, so it's not... I will say this. During the game, I was texting with a friend of mine over Instagram, Bama Factor. Go check him out. He's got a good Instagram and a good podcast. We were talking, and it was doom and gloom in that chat. It wasn't, we're going to lose this game and we're going to lose the next 6 games, but it was getting to that point. Bama put up 14 points in the first 3 quarters against USF. That's not good. If you don't know, we struggled in this football game. It was 13-14 in the third quarter. Now, I know we're going to have a lot of talking about penalties and all this kind of stuff. Yes, penalties did take back a couple of big chunk plays. They took back a touchdown. If we look at stats overall, let's see, penalties. Bama, 13 for 120. So over a football field worth of penalties. USF, 11 for 29. I will say that refereeing crew is always way too, not soft, but they give away way too much. We're here to play football. We're not here to watch referees talk about football. We want to play. If you're going to give every single holding call in every single game, that's a light one. Just don't ref the game. Like, we're here to play football. It really was a thing of, if you can let them play, let them play. So yeah, that was annoying. That was frustrating. We never really controlled the game until the very end of it. 31 minutes of possession time versus 28 or almost 29. It was hard to watch. It was a little bit tough to watch. We did have a couple bright spots in that game. I'll talk about the end of that game, and I'll talk about what you all want to talk about here in a second. But defense played good enough. We played a good enough football game. One thing last year that we could not do, and kind of in years prior too, is we could not get off the field on third downs. Honestly, if you go back and watch that Georgia SEC championship game, my whole message was win on third down. If you can get off the field on third downs, you will win that football game against Georgia. And we did that this week. USF was 2 of 18 on third down and 0 of 2 on fourth down. So they were 2 for 20 on third and fourth down combined, and we still struggled, which is scary to say, but we always talk about adjustments and the process and all that kind of stuff. We saw live adjustments as the game went on. We saw in those last 5 drives or whatever it was, we saw the process and we saw the adjustments we made. Um, I'm not here to bash anybody. There's not a chance I could be a D1 athlete. None of that kind of stuff. So I'm not here to bash anybody or say anybody's not fit to do a job. We had a guy on that front line that I don't think was quite ready for the job. I'm not even going to name any names. Because, he's a kid. He's going out there. He's a college athlete. You got to look at it from that perspective. He wasn't ready for that job yet. I'll read you out the stat. I have it on my phone. And I'll just let you be the judge of what all is said. So this is the offensive line chart. Now, if you watch games, you know in the past we've had struggles with our offensive line, especially in these past 2 or 3 years. So starting out, we got left tackle Tyler Booker gave up 2 pressures and 2 penalties. Left guard Gio Vandermark, 0 pressures, 3 penalties. Center Parker Brailsford, 0 pressures, 0 penalties. I want to give credit to him. He played in a great game. We had 1 bad snap last week, none this week, so he played a good game. Jaden Roberts, 2 pressures, 0 penalties. And then Wilkin Formby, 4 pressures, 4 penalties. There's stats there. I'm not going to say anything more than that. There was a change that was made. Formby came off for Pritchett, which we have had problems on the offensive line as far as health goes. Pritchett came on, and there it was. You just missed the stat. Bama put up 42% of their offensive production when Pritchett was in the game. I want to say it was for 7 plays. That's a huge thing. That was adjustments being made. Pritchett was iffy in that game, I want to say. If you ask the coaching staff, he wasn't 100% fit. Got into the game. We pulled away. We scored 28 points. There it is. 42% of Alabama's offensive production, that's Bama Hammer, came in 7 plays when Elijah Pritchett was on the field. That tells you everything you need to know. He has to start the next game. When Proctor gets back healthy, he'll probably have to start as well. So one thing that scares me from this game, it's not even really the game itself. It's the lack of depth. And whenever you see, for me, I love recruiting and I love the process of recruiting. If you watch some of these guys, we got, a Ryan Williams type, a good quarterback coming in, a great running back. Those are great. You have to have skill guys that come in. But it's the same thing. You got to be getting excited about offensive line guys, defensive line guys, the guys that do the dirty work that doesn't get enough praise, and they really get ridiculed when they don't do their job correctly. Those are the guys you also got to bring in. And obviously Alabama has some of the best recruiting in the country. It's not like we don't recruit well or anything like that. But we've got to be able to find some depth there, which there's just not right now. We have Proctor get injured in warm-ups. He's day-to-day. I hope he'll be back for Wisconsin. We'll talk about that game on Friday. He's got to come back and get healthy. And then, again, I think Elijah Pritchett has to start the next game as well. Booker, one of the leaders on the team also, I think he'll be fine. Brailsford was great. Vandermark's good enough, I think. So, and the problem is when you talk about offensive line, when one person falls, it kind of brings the whole thing down. It really is like the weakest link in the chain kind of thing. And I think that's what happened this past week. We saw adjustments be made. We came away with a win. It's a lesson learned. And there are some bright spots from that game. Like I said, defense played a good enough game. We got off the field on 3rd downs. Ryan Williams is the best freshman in the country. Just going to go ahead and put that out there. We still have a great running back room. Jalen Milroe, he didn't play the best game, but it's hard to play a great game whenever you're struggling a little bit with your offensive line, getting constant pressures. I think we'll be fine. I think going away to Wisconsin, it's going to be a little bit of a litmus test. Going and testing these young guys especially, as far as being away from home, being in a hostile environment. We had a couple of guys get beat over the top this past week, but the quarterback for USF missed a couple of throws, so it could have been a lot tighter of a game than the score ended up showing. It was a lot tighter of a game than the score ended up showing, but it could have been even worse, honestly. I never got to the point where, we're going to lose this football game or any of that, but it was feeling like that for a moment. Like this one, we slip up one more time and this game could be done. We lost the turnover battle. We gave up 3 turnovers, which it wasn't something I normally expect or see. Who was it? I think Jam had a fumble, and then we fumbled. I think Law had a fumble on the kick return, and then we dropped one on the goal line. So, I mean, the one on the goal line, there's 7 points right there. We had a good kick return by Law, and then we dropped it right at the start of the second half. And then Miller lost one also. So there's a couple things in there that we have to clean up. We got to get ready for Wisconsin because Wisconsin is the last hurdle before Georgia. And that's a totally different animal. Georgia's coming into Tuscaloosa in a couple of weeks. So got to get ready for that. Got to stay healthy. And if we can avoid the injury bug, we've got a great shot to go all the way. If we start picking up injuries in places that we lack depth, it could make it a lot more difficult, and there's going to have to be a lot more work around, which, again, we still have the talent, and we recruit well enough, and we have the coaching staff. I think we'll be fine, but we got to try and veer away from injury, and we got to definitely take the lessons from this game and find a starting front that works, because this past week was not it. When Pritchard came in, I think we're fine, but how we started, that just cannot happen against a team like Georgia or Tennessee or anybody like that, because it's not going to be pretty for us. But yeah, I think that's going to be it. It's not a whole bunch of doom and gloom. One thing I do got to say, I was there for the Saban Field dedication. It was great. It was a lot of fun. It was pretty emotional. I'm not going to lie. I live streamed it, and it was a little bit emotional when Chris Stewart was up there, and then he asked Saban and Miss Terry to walk down the Walk of Champions for the last time. Like, that one got to me. That one got to me good. And then when they walked up the field for the last time, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Nick Saban obviously is the biggest thing that happened to Alabama football. He's the biggest thing that happened to modern football in general. And the fact that he's now, I think I put it in an Instagram post, immortalized in the university at Tuscaloosa, it's something pretty special. So congratulations, Coach Saban. It's going to be cool having his name up for however long, Brian Denny stands, which hopefully is forever. But yeah, that was a cool experience. Also, shout out to Chris Stewart. I met him after the game. He was a busy guy. Stopped, shook my hand. I appreciate it. Cool guy. I was glad to get to meet him and tell him he did a good job. So that was a fun weekend. Other than maybe the game, it was a little more sweat-inducing than I kind of wanted it to be. But I think that's going to do it for today. I appreciate you guys who dropped by. Let me know what you guys thought about the game in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, if you were stressed, if we're going to lose 5 games, I saw that. So, yeah, it was an interesting week. It was a big test. We got through it. We were resilient enough, which I think is one word that DeBoer used. And there are going to be some dogfights. USF is not a walkover team like Western Kentucky was. They're physical. They're big. They're proud of their football team, so they're not going to give up anything easy. I'm glad we got a win. Glad we were able to walk away with it in the end. We saw some adjustments that needed to be made. We made them, and we got away with the win. So, again, I appreciate you guys dropping by. Drop a follow on Instagram. That's mainly where I post everything. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, all that good stuff, it's going to be over there. So I appreciate you guys dropping in. Please hit that subscribe button. Trying to grow this YouTube channel. It's fairly new, so I appreciate you guys dropping by, and I will see you next week. Roll Tide.